Hello and welcome to DD India's rolling coverage of the US presidential elections 2024. Apart from India, perhaps the most significant democratic contests among the over 70 which have been taking place in different parts of the world throughout this momentous year. I'm Gautam Roy. First, the headlines at this hour. Voting in the United States for its next president is in its final hours now. The winner needs 270 electoral votes of the 238 to win. Republican candidate Donald Trump casts his vote in Florida, says he's very confident of his win. Democrat Kamala Harris turns up at the Democratic National Convention to work the phones. US stocks closed sharply higher on Tuesday after data signals a solid economy. But markets could remain volatile this week till final US election results come in. And Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu fires Defense Minister Yoav Gallant. Israel Katz appointed as the Defense Minister now. All right, we are focusing on the latest in the US presidential elections as the race to the White House is approaching the finish line. Well, voting for the 2024 US presidential elections has been underway. A race churned by unprecedented events, 2 assassination attempts against Donald Trump, President Joe Biden's surprise withdrawal and Harris's rapid rise, remained neck and neck after billions of dollars have been spent and there's been months of frenetic campaigning. If Harris wins, she would make history, becoming the first woman, first Asian American and first black woman to win the presidency. While a Trump victory would also be historic, he joined Grover Cleveland as the only president to serve non-consecutive terms. Of course, he's also a convicted felon, which hasn't happened earlier. Now, since the US is divided in different time zones, the eastern part of the country sees polling first. More than 80 million Americans have already voted before Tuesday, either through mail or in person. And lines at many polling stations on election day were short and orderly. Some glitches of vote counting technology were reported in Cambria County in Pennsylvania, and a local court agreed to extend voting hours by 2 hours on Tuesday night. Hoax bomb threats, many of which appeared to originate from Russian email domains, were directed at polling locations in 3 battleground states: Georgia, Michigan, and Wisconsin. As voting was underway, that's what the FBI, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, has said. None of the threats were immediately determined to be credible. That's also something that the FBI added. Opinion polls show the candidates running neck and neck in each of the 7 states are likely to determine the winner. That's Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. And we're getting some preliminary exit poll results as well. One from Wisconsin, which says 44% of the voters view Trump favorably, while Harris has 46%. In Nevada, if we turn to Nevada as well, well, that's the result for Nevada. Trump has got 47%, while Harris is at 44%. And in Michigan, Trump is 45%, while Harris is at 48%. So there you have the difference in each of these states. And the exit poll is about 3%, which I think should be within the margin of error as well. But that's how close these elections are in these key states. Now, Democratic presidential nominee and US Vice President Kamala Harris visited the Democratic National Committee headquarters in Washington, D.C. on Election Day. Harris expressed her gratitude to phone bankers supporting her campaign. During her visit, Harris personally connected with multiple callers, encouraging them to cast their votes. Harris, the first female vice president, would become the first woman, black woman and South Asian American to win the presidency if that happens. And Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump on Tuesday said he would be prepared to concede defeat after Tuesday's vote if it's a fair election.
If it's a fair election, I'd be the first one to acknowledge it. And I think well, so far I think it's been fair. I think there's been a lot of court cases. Both sides are lawyered up. Thousands of lawyers are involved, thousands, can you imagine? And part of that is because we have too complicated a process. If we had a piece of paper, watermarked, you know that paper is more sophisticated now than computers. It's watermarked paper. You cannot, it's unbelievable what happens with it. There's nothing you can do to cheat.
And asked about fears of unrest after the election and whether he would call on supporters to avoid violence, he criticized the question and said his supporters are not violent people.
I don't have to tell them that there'll be no violence. Of course there'll be no violence. My supporters are not violent people. I don't have to tell them that. And I certainly don't want any violence, but I certainly don't have to tell. These are great people. These are people that believe in no violence.
And Trump again raised concerns about the use of electronic voting machines. After casting his vote in Florida, Donald Trump reiterated his previous criticism of electronic voting machines, suggesting they were less secure than paper ballots and would delay the outcome being known.
A thing like that should never happen. This election should be over. They spend all this money on machines. And frankly, if they'd use paper ballots, it would be over by 10 o'clock. And by the way, the paper ballots would cost 8%. It would be 8% of the cost. If they would use paper ballots, voter ID, proof of citizenship, and one-day voting, it would all be over by 10 o'clock in the evening. It's crazy.
All right, let's give you a live update from Washington, D.C. My colleague Shubhendu Ghosh is joining me from there. Shubhendu, well, good morning to you. It's almost morning here in Delhi, but it is election night indeed in the U.S., all over the U.S. Washington, D.C. is where Kamala Harris is soon to have an election watch party in her alma mater, Howard College. But what are these exit polls indicating? These are very early exit polls, but in battleground states, it seems that the battle is very, very close. 2 right now being declared in favor of Harris, 1 in favor of Trump.
Absolutely, Gautam. Good evening from Washington, D.C. The election night is just about to begin. Where I am, if I could tell you just briefly, I am at a polling station, a prominent one. You can see the queues behind me. The queues have been continuously getting longer. Till 8 p.m. there is still time for people to come here in the queue and vote. People who join the queue till about 8 p.m. will be allowed to vote. And we see this queue continuing, people patiently waiting in the line for their opportunity to be able to vote. There's a lot of work that the voters have to do. It's not just a choice for the president they have to make. There are a number of seats of senators, House of Representatives. There is also an amendment on abortion, also on marijuana. There are local referendums that each respective state and city is offering on the ballot. So that's where what is about my location. Coming to your question, Gautam, yes, it's a nail biter. It's a very close contest, and I think the initial figures, exit polls that you referred to, really indicate that. It's a pattern that we've also seen in the opinion polls in the run-up to the election. Very, very closely fought contest, and we see that tonight is going to be an important one when more figures, more data comes in. These are really early hours for us to be able to talk about the meaning and the direction of the trends, because there's so many places. Here in Washington, the national capital, the voting is still on. And till about, as I mentioned, 8 p.m. the voting will go on, and that's pretty much the order in the other states as well. And from here, if you go towards the West Coast, which there's a 3-hour difference because of the time zone, there's still maybe many more hours of voting to go. It's a little early, but yes, the polls that you suggest do indicate the manner in which the opinion polls were also hinting. Very closely fought contest. We'll have to wait and watch, really, who comes out on top. But it's not going to be an easy calculation as I see it.
Any reaction so far from the Kamala Harris camp? What's the mood over there? We saw that she was working the phones at the Democratic National Committee that she had visited a short while back. When is she going to Howard College?
Well, no reactions again, perhaps because these are early trends that are coming in. Also, more consciously, both the leaders, Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, we're learning from sources, have decided to get a little quiet. It's been a very hectic campaigning season. But till more solid numbers come out, more trends appear from the other states, till the polling concludes, at least in the East Coast, and more concrete numbers can be talked about. Till then, the leaders are expected to be at their respective camps. Donald Trump at Mar-a-Lago in Florida, near the Palm Beach, and Kamala Harris, as you mentioned, Howard College, her alma mater, that's where she is likely to be, an important place of her own upbringing and education. So on a night as historic as this, she would like to be where she found her roots, her knowledge, her expertise, and her will to fight for the people. So in that sense, not much that we're hearing from the leaders as yet, but it may be a little too early to expect that too.
Okay. Well, Kamala Harris, of course, sent in her mail ballot in on Sunday, so she doesn't have to really step out to vote today. But just tell me, we're also getting inputs about how there have been some delays in certain places because which voting time has been extended. How is that likely to affect, when polls close and then ultimately the results?
We have to look at the kind of electioneering structure that the United States has, Gautam. It's unlike India, for reference. There is no common central election body that regulates the elections everywhere. It doesn't work like that in the United States. Every state has its own election mechanism, the speed at which the polling is conducted, the speed at which the counting is done thereafter is independent for all the 50 states, and therefore there is a gap at the speed at which, the efficiency at which states are able to gather the votes and then count them. And it is millions of people are voting in these elections. Overall, 244 eligible voters. About 80 million people had already voted in the early voting. So there's a lot of data, a lot of voters that the administration has to engage with. The station where I am, the polling station where I am, the queue is, it appears, becoming longer as we are getting closer to the time of the conclusion of the poll. So in that sense, there are a lot of variables that the poll authorities have to face as well. There's a very strong, very heavy security apparatus also, which is monitoring the movement of people. All those reasons put together, there is a certain difference in the speed at which this electioneering is happening in different counties and different states, and that is yet part of how it happens in America.
Yes, and of course there's been hoax calls as well, the FBI putting out that a lot of those calls have come in from certain domains in Russia, and there was an incident at the capital as well. So is there still a lingering apprehension, some fear that something untoward could happen, and people are being watchful about that as well?
Well, I'm sorry to inform Gautam, but really that tension that we've been talking about, the lingering tension in the air as to what will happen in these elections, that phase, in fact, is yet to begin. The polling has been quite peaceful. People have come in. We've gone to multiple polling stations in Washington, getting updates from other states. The polling, by and large, has been very peaceful, but this was also expected. It is when the trends begin to come in, it is when this very, very closely fought election, such a polarized electioneering meets its conclusion, when we get to know who's leading and who's falling behind. That is when there is an apprehension that there might be some kind of outpouring or expression of passions or anger by the side who does not see the results as favorable. So that phase where the tension were all getting accumulated. The anxiety was all getting accumulated. In many ways, is yet to begin. For now, it's the polling that is happening quite peacefully, but the security apparatus has been upgraded everywhere. Here in Washington, national capital, all the important buildings from White House to the Capitol, they've all been barricaded behind steel fences. Visitors can't even go close to them. Again, one refers to the 2021 insurrection incident at the Capitol when the armed mob tried to overturn and in fact block the electoral vote counting here at the Capitol. So in view of that and the kind of vitriolic campaigning that has happened here, the allegations of voter fraud, all of those put together, the nervousness in the system, the security apparatus is on the alert. We're hearing police sirens every now and then because they are trying to monitor every corner of the county and the districts here in every state. National Guards are also on alert, we are told, especially when the counting begins and more trends begin to come in. That's when there is an apprehension that some law and order situation could prevail if the results are particularly problematic for one side or the other.
Okay. The other thing is about the counting process itself. We heard Donald Trump come out and speak in Mar-a-Lago. He said that he'll accept the result, whatever it is, even if he is defeated, if the process is fair. Now, he's always raised questions about it, that it's not fair. He's questioned the electronic voting machines. So tell us about the kind of transparency that there is, and is there also a way of ensuring that the results come out well quicker than they did the last time around?
The poll authorities would make us believe that the election process is absolutely foolproof. The allegations of voter fraud, election manipulation that have been made since 2020 when Donald Trump lost those elections. We've seen that investigations have happened over the past 2 to 3 years. They're still underway in many ways, but nothing major has come out. There have been instances of clerical error, some errors as far as counting of a few votes are concerned, some duplication is concerned. But the kind of large-scale election manipulation and stealing that Donald Trump had accused the authorities of, that is something that has not been proven at all. And the authorities, in fact, say the same thing, that investigations have been done. There is nothing that should make people doubtful about the manner in which the electioneering mechanism works here in the United States. But this is time of elections, politics, perceptions. What the leaders say has a great bearing on the minds of the supporters. So Donald Trump earlier, although today he came across as more reasonable in saying that, if I lose, I lose, and the election looks fair for now. But earlier, it was him who said that the only two ways this election is likely to pan out. Either Donald Trump is going to win, or it's going to be an election fraud.
All right, well, we'll have to wait and see what happens. Shubhendu, thank you for joining us for the time being from Washington, D.C. with the latest on the U.S. elections. Now, the 2024 U.S. election, which went to the polls on Tuesday, is set to become the most expensive in history, with the total contributions reaching $15.9 billion US. According to non-profit Open Secrets, the spending, which includes congressional contests, will surpass $15.1 billion spent in 2020 and more than double 2016's $6.5 billion. In the hotly contested presidential race, Vice President Kamala Harris has emerged as a fundraising leader. Her campaign directly raised over $1 billion US, with 40% coming from small donors, plus an additional $586 million from supporting political action committees. Donald Trump's campaign raised $382 million directly, with 28% from small donors, while affiliated committees contributed $694 million. The largest donor was Timothy Mellon, the reclusive 82-year-old banking heir, who contributed $197 million to Trump and Republican causes. Trump and Republican other major Republican supporters included Richard and Elizabeth Uline from the packaging industry, casino magnate Miriam Adelson, Tesla and SpaceX CEO Elon Musk as well.
Absolutely.
Well, let's bring in our expert guest now. With me also is my colleague Ramesh Ramachandran, and our guest Avatan Kumar is joining us. He's a well-known columnist from Chicago, Illinois. good morning to you as well, Mr. Kumar. What do you make of how the election is going at this moment? It's been largely peaceful, but if you talk about Illinois itself, it had turned blue the last time. It's been blue for quite some time. The last time Biden won it by 17%. How's it going this time around?
I think in Illinois is a pretty safe state for the Democrats. I don't think Republicans have won here in a while. It's a pretty much Democrat monopoly state, just like California, New York, and New Jersey. So I don't expect that to change at all in Illinois. As far as peaceful being concerned, it's usually the elections are always very peaceful here. There's no issue during the election time.
Wonderful. Ramesh, if I could come to you now, if you talk about the exit polls, just your comments on them. These are very critical states, the battleground states that the first numbers have come for. And for now, it seems that it's still within the margin of error, 3% in all of these three states.
Indeed, Gautam. Just quickly before that, for the benefit of viewers joining us from around the world, the first polls, Gautam, will close in under 8 minutes from now at 4:30 IST. That's 2300 GMT. Moving on to Pennsylvania by 6:30 India time, and then if you move westwards toward the western coast of the US, all the way up to California. So progressively we'll get to get news about the polls closing across the US. Now coming to the exit polls conducted by Edison Research, Gautam, very interesting national picture emerging. And also the specifics, if we take a deep dive into the 7 key swing states in particular. Let me give our viewers an overview of the national picture emerging, Gautam. In terms of the issues involved, 35% say democracy is the biggest issue for them, or the lack thereof.
Not the economy.
Not the economy. Economy comes a distant second at 31%, Gautam. So 35% say democracy is the issue, 31% say economy, 14% say abortion, 11% say immigration, and only 4% say foreign policy is the biggest issue for them. Now, coming to the two personalities, the two key candidates in question, Trump and Harris, Gautam, 51% across the US say we trust Trump on the economy, and 47% say we trust Harris on the economy. So clearly Trump winning hands down insofar as economy is concerned, whereas 73% say democracy is under threat in the US, and 25% say democracy, on the other hand, they feel is secure. So clearly more Democrats, it seems, voting for democracy being under threat as one of the key issues. And coming to the one key state, to my mind, Gautam, that's Pennsylvania. Now, again, very interesting numbers coming up. 83% voters were white in this election, which means that there were more white men voting in 2024 than previously in 2020. 9% were black, which was again less than the last figure of 11% in 2020. Hispanics more or less the same at 5%. 46% view Harris favorably in Pennsylvania, down from 50% for Biden in 2020. Therefore, Harris is less popular than Biden in Pennsylvania. Whereas, interestingly, again, Trump, Gautam, 47% say we view Trump favorably. That's more or less constant for Trump for the last two elections. No change in that. So, very interesting numbers insofar as issues are concerned, and also how the viewers and the voters view the respective candidates, be it Trump and Harris insofar as democracy is concerned, or the big picture economy.
No data for women?
Yes, there are. In Pennsylvania in particular, Gautam, 83% voters were white, male, and there were no separate figures for women insofar as Pennsylvania is concerned.
All right. If I could again go to Mr. Kumar. Mr. Kumar, in terms of how the national picture is emerging, and it's been emerging for quite some time now, do you think that this is something that is really hitting the nail on the head, that perhaps people care more about how, the fate of democracy in America than the fate of its economy?
Well, you have to look at it this way. Fate of democracy is a concern for both sides, even Republican side and for Democrat side as well, because for Republicans, they say that the democracy has been watered down because of all the censorship, all the freedom of expression issues that we saw during COVID time and during Biden-Harris administration time. So yes, that is a bigger issue. I haven't looked at the data, so I don't know exactly what's going on there. But previously, prior to the exit poll data that you're citing, all the indications were that immigration and economy were the bigger issues and for most people.
Okay. Why do you think it might have changed?
I don't know, depending on where the data is coming from. We are just looking at the.
It's come from Edison Research, which basically does this kind of an exercise for a number of networks.
Right. I'm not discounting what they're saying, but depends on where the data is coming. It's coming mostly from the East Coast area where the polling has been done. Right. Otherwise, we still have the Midwest and the West Coast. There may be variables over there. So I'm not sure why the difference is, but again, I'm just trying to hammer out the point that the concern for democracy is expressed in a different way for both groups of people, for those who are voting for Democrats and those who are voting for Republicans.
All right. Ramesh, do you think that that particular point that Mr. Kumar is making has weight that could be a reason why democracy has become such a big concern, although most voters thought and spoke really openly about the state of the economy as well, and again divided on who should be really steering it ahead as far as the White House is concerned.
Well, Gautam, our guest would probably be correct in assessing and thinking the way he does. But that said, in the run-up to the election and polling day in particular, Gautam, three key issues stood out for many voters across the US and analysts around the world as well. Those three key issues were, one was abortion, reproductive rights, the issue of immigration, illegal immigration in particular, and last but not the least, the economy and jobs. But the survey points to a different picture altogether. They put the threat to democracy above all else, including that, as you mentioned, economy and immigration, and that, to my mind, would give you a fair indication of the
Do you think that the Democrats really trying to get the message home about Agenda 2025 that might have hit the nail on the head?
Well, as I guess mentioning, we don't know the sample size or from where they've sourced these respondents. But if as he mentions, we are focusing primarily on the East Coast, then I guess what he's saying is correct and could be correct. That it reflects a sense of the voter sentiment across the eastern seaboard of the U.S. as compared to the so-called red states in the middle and going further back westwards to the other states which have traditionally voted Republican. But the big picture emerging as of now in this exit poll in particular, Gautam, is that it beats expectations by suggesting and pointing to the fact that democracy is a key issue as compared to even economy, immigration issues which have been bandied about for the better part of the year and more by both candidates, in particular from their respective constituents. And most people saying that they trust Trump on the issue of economy more than anything else.
All right, in any case, in any case, the life expectancy of exit polls in this case is quite short since we'll soon start getting results once the polls close as well in quite a few states, if not in all of them, and the election cannot be called, completely if it's a close one till all the results come in. Now I'm told that I can cross over to my other colleague as well in the US, Amrit Pal Singh, joining us from Florida, West Palm Beach, Mar-a-Lago. Amrit, good morning to you from here in Delhi. It's election night, of course, still polling going on. We saw Donald Trump coming out and talking about how he might accept whatever the outcome is if the entire process is fair. But just tell us about the mood in the Trump camp right now, considering the kind of exit polls that are coming in.
Donald Trump added a very big rider saying if the polls are fair. That means he still is casting aspersions on the whole electoral process, which he has been doing all through his campaign. Trying to suggest that there is a vote fraud that is taking place, especially in the mail-in votes. that could be a tactic by him to ensure that more and more Republican voters come out and in person today and come out and vote if he raises up this bogey of electoral fraud without evidence. And I use that word very, I consider that word, and I use that after much consideration, the word bogey, that there is no evidence that he's provided. I don't speak for any county election board, but after having visited various polling stations, there is a system in place here, and it is not easy, despite what people like Elon Musk have been saying, that voter fraud is possible. To my eye, the possibility of that is very minuscule. Anyway, so that could be a tactic by Donald Trump to draw out more Republican voters for him. What is the mood of the voter? Oh, the nation is divided right from the middle. At each and every polling station that I've been to and I've interacted with voters today, and also in early voting in various states like California, Texas, New York, Pennsylvania, where I've traveled across the United States, people have their preferences are based on partisan loyalties. They say jobs, economy, cost of living, rising housing affordability, taxes, etc. matter to them. To women also, abortion and reproductive rights and women's rights do matter to them. But when you ask them off camera that finally on the voting day, where do you vote, or how would you vote on? Would you vote on based on issues? They say we would vote how we've been voting all along. So the society here is very, very polarized, and in this campaign, the kind of rhetoric which came out from both sides charged up the atmosphere and divided the American society further. Gautam.
We have this particular exit poll saying that the people think that the topmost issue is democracy and the fate of democracy in the US. Now, in terms of how things are bearing out, because there have been certain delays as well in counting, time has been extended in certain counties as well. Do you think that ultimately it will impact the time period that the results are declared as well?
In very few counties, the time period has been extended after complaints were received that there were glitches in the electoral process. Most places it's ballot voting. Only very few places it's voting through machines. But so in very few counties in some states, the voting has been extended. I think the overall result, when it will come out, will depend upon how close the contest in the swing states is in particular counties, and if it's very, very close, then there could be demands for recounts. We could see lawsuits being filed. Already about 90 lawsuits were filed even before the first ballot was cast. So expect all that. But if it's a clear mandate for one party, for either party, then you could have the results coming in earlier. But my sense is that it would take days before a clear picture emerges that who will sit in the Oval Office for the next 4 years. Gautam.
Yeah, just stay with me. Let me bring in our guest, Avatans Kumar, as well. As a political observer, as a columnist, a political columnist, Mr. Kumar, what are the things that you're looking out for in this election that will give you an indication of which way might it go?
It's very hard to say right now, depending on how the elections have been held in the last couple of cycles. All it matters is those 5-6 swing states, and a matter of few thousand votes in each state. That has been the difference. Even in the 2020, it was about 40-some thousand votes. There was totally, in terms of difference between winning and losing in those swing states. So I don't see any sea change significantly going on. I don't see any major state flipping in terms of from blue to red or red to blue. But we will see how it comes out in terms of those swing states. Remember last time Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, those states went to Mr. Biden, whereas in 2016, those states were won by Mr. Trump. So that's the difference is going to be. And if you allow me to address the point that you were making about the fraud and all that, you have to understand the fraud element that Mr. Trump talks about is not necessarily in terms of any kind of the fraud in terms of voting, but if you change the rules, like the rules were changed in 2020 unilaterally in the middle of the things, those are the things that matter much. For example, also a lot of censorship was there. Hunter Biden's laptop issue was not allowed to be published in the social media or in the newspaper. Nobody cared. And there's a research that suggests that if had the Hunter Biden laptop issue been allowed to carry on as a normal news cycle, that would have changed the outcome of the election. Also, as you know, during because of the COVID, the election rules were changed. The mailbox, where they are put, how they are collected, things like that. So that's some of the things that people in the Republican Party, or maybe even Donald Trump, that's what they're talking about.
But it hasn't happened this time around, has it?
Well, not in that scale. No, but we also have heard about things where non-citizens are on the voter list, right? Even if it's a fraction of, thousands of, just a couple of thousand, those are the things that raises concern and raises the, whatever you want to call it in terms of, but the Democrats have tried to, they don't allow to have ID. They don't allow to have proof of citizenship for registering for election. So those are some of the things that are always going to be coming back whenever we talk about the integrity of the elections in the U.S.
Okay. Ramesh, do you think that this sort of thing will become an issue depending on how close the results turn out to be? If they're not, which is an unlikely prospect at the moment, if you go by what's been said all along in the opinion polls, even the exit polls for that matter. But do you think that this will become an issue as we go along into the long election night and then into the next morning as well, perhaps?
In fact, Gautam, it's interesting you should raise this point, because I have my own list of questions that I've been pondering over the last many hours and days now. For instance, the one question that comes to my mind is that, we've heard of conspiracy theories in various elections in the US, talk about foreign interference, of vote theft and voter fraud. As you mentioned, Trump himself has said that all parties,
well, the
both
FBI
Republicans,
itself has confirmed that there is foreign interference.
are getting lawyered up, and 90 odd cases have already been, this battle might still be fought in the courts as we see it. But the big picture that's emerging, I want to go back to those numbers that have come up in the exit polls by Edison Research, Gautam, and that's interesting. I want to go back to those numbers. Why? Because the conventional wisdom was that economy, immigration, abortion were the three key issues. But here's a fourth issue that's trumped everything else. 35% say that democracy, or the lack of it, is the biggest issue for them. And more than half, 51%, say we trust Trump on economy, and 73% say democracy is under threat. The question that is agitating many a mind as we speak is the U.S. ready for a woman president? Conversely, is the U.S. ready for a Trump 2.0? And the answers are not far to seek. If the numbers are correct by any such of imagination, Gautam, then it's not even too close to call. It's much beyond that.
Yes, it's so divided. That because to a lot of people, if Kamala Harris wins, that's unpalatable, and to another set of people, if Trump wins, that is also unpalatable. So let me bounce this to Amrit. Amrit, a question was posed to Donald Trump about, will there be violence and all that. And he snapped back and said that, why would there be violence? My people are not violent. But do you think that is something that is a prospect that could materialize, considering how divided this polity has been and the kind of language that has been used through the course of this entire contest? How new depths have, the entire conversation has, the discourse has gone to new depths and new lows really, and this could all then become something that precipitates something.
That's right. First, the threat of violence, it does exist, Gautam. It is a real threat. That's why you see the Capitol Hill being guarded off, the White House being guarded off, the rails constructed, bullet-proof glasses at polling stations, snipers on rooftops, sniffer dogs. All this is unprecedented. Like never before has these kind of security measures been put. So clearly there is a threat of violence, no matter what Donald Trump says. I think I was there at that voting station when Donald Trump spoke about this. I think what Donald Trump's strategists would have told him, because Donald voted early in the day at about noontime here, US Eastern time. So there were still about 7 hours left for voting to go. His strategists must have told him that to get the undecided voter who may side with you on economy, on jobs, and the anti-incumbency may weigh against Kamala because she's a part of the current administration. But the way you've spoken about, you've derided in the kind of tone that you've used, if you tone it down a bit, you may attract that voter. And both of them really need voters right now because it's too close a contest. It's just who will win will depend upon how many voters they are able to get out, especially in the swing states. So to appeal to that voter, he might have trying to send that massive message that there'll be no violence from my camp. But trust you me, read the social media. It's a buzz with how there are camps ready to protest. Go in as protesters. Once you go in as protesters, what was December 6, 2021? It was just a protest that went out of hand, and they tried to stop
We're getting to the juncture where we begin finding out, Amrit, as to what actually will happen, because the breaking news that we're getting now is that the first statewide poll have started to close. Polls have closed, in fact, in parts of Indiana and Kentucky. The next polls will also close shortly as well, and we will then be heading straightway into counting. So right now, polls are closing in parts of Indiana and Kentucky. That's the breaking news. That was the first two regions that were supposed to close their polling, and that indeed has happened. So no delay there as such, it seems. Ramesh, if I could come to you and talk about that. It seems that now we will be getting into that phase where perhaps we will have some of these networks also calling different states for, the two camps.
Indeed, just to recap for the benefit of viewers joining us right now, Gautam, as you mentioned, the first polls have closed just minutes ago in the states of Indiana and Kentucky. That's 4:30 India time, that's 2300 GMT. And progressively, as we move westward to the west coast of the US, more states will see the polls close as we go along. The last state to go to the close the polls would be Alaska at 11:30 India time, 11:30 in the morning. That's 0600 GMT. So we have to wait and watch how the other states, the polling pans out there. And as you mentioned, Kamala can be expected to visit her alma mater at Harvard University to spend the election day. As the counting begins, Trump will be at Mar-a-Lago and Biden will remain in the White House. No engagements for him as of yet. So clearly, another question, a key question would be to look out for the voter turnout. In 2020, the percentage was more than 60%, which was less than 60% in 2016. So all eyes on the number of people who go out and actually vote, because that matters to both Harris and Trump. Remember,
and for now it looks like it will be more.
it's at the intersection of gender, race and class, with the working class, middle class, the upper middle class, how affluent you are, how poor you are. So it's the intersection of gender, race and class which will determine the outcome of this election, and also whether the white women, which about 30 odd percent of whom had voted for Trump in the last two elections, will they remain with Republicans or will they switch loyalties to Kamala Harris and the Democratic Party in this election remains to be seen. Also, the way the white male will turn out to vote in this election will also hold a key to Trump's performance in this election. So all eyes on the way these demographics perform in the next several hours, Gautam.
So as poll start begins to close, let me also bring in again Avtans Kumar, our guest from Chicago. What do you make of the fact, as Ramesh mentioned, a key criteria to assess these elections will be the actual turnout, and that already we've had over 80 million people coming out in early voting, and it's quite possible that the numbers of 2020 might be surpassed as well. Do you think that will indeed happen? There will be record polling in the US this time around because of the kind of issues that have been raked up, but then there's fatigue to consider as well, because it's been a very, very long race as well. Initially it was Trump and Biden, then it suddenly 107 days ago turned into Trump versus Harris.
Yes, I expect the turnout to be much larger this time. Anecdotally, I can tell you that I voted early, and even during my voting, there were lots of people in line. So, and also there is a lot of enthusiasm about this year's vote. And I remember last time's voting in 2020 was during COVID time, and there is no such factor at this time. So I expect a much larger voting percentage this time. And one point I would like to bring to notice is also, when you were talking about the demography also, the education level is very significant. Usually, the more educated you are, graduate level or higher, undergraduate, graduate level, the more you are more likely to be a Democrat. If you are less educated, you're more likely to be a Republican. Another point I would also, if you allow me, I would like to mention is that when we talk about violence, I think we have to keep in mind that the most of the violence that happened was during the last election cycle was Antifa and BLM kind of violence that was going on in the US since the death of George Floyd. There was no violence when Trump lost. There was protest at the Capitol. There was some rioting, very unfortunate, but there was no violence from the Trump camp. And also, if you talk about the armed people, I don't think there was armed people. But you remember, if there are armed people, you are allowed to carry conceal in the U.S. because of our Second Amendment law. People had rifles and in the open, and there were protesting at the Capitol Hill. And remember one more thing, the only person who died during the January 6th riots was a rider who was killed by the police. So keep those things in mind when we talk about violence.
Sure, got that. Thank you so much for joining us, Avtans Kumar from Chicago, with your comments on how we're seeing these elections unfold. Ramesh, in terms of how things are going, do you feel that this election will deliver in terms of a record turnout, and that tells us about how the US collectively feels about this entire democratic process? It's not just about the divide, it's about issues that are important, and which is why people are going to turn out in the largest numbers possible.
Indeed, the expectation is that the voter turnout will be bigger than the previous elections put together. But that said, Gautam, I'm wondering whether what these numbers say what I think they mean. For instance, in Pennsylvania, the key swing state all eyes are on with 19 electoral college votes, Gautam. What does it mean when the exit polls say that 83% of the voters were white male? In terms of demographics, what would that translate into votes for the Democrats or the Republicans? The number of black voters has gone down marginally from 2020. What does that mean? How will that translate on the ground? These things, have to be factored in, and we have to wait and watch how these numbers pan out. But these are very interesting numbers, and one doesn't know what to make of them, because if the numbers, as it suggests, is that number of male white voters has gone up as compared to black voters correspondingly, then it will point to an interesting figure in Pennsylvania, which, by the way, is a must-win state for Kamala Harris. Will she win there or not remains to be seen. We'll know in the next several hours.
Yes, certainly. Biden won it by more than 80,000 votes the last time around. We'll have to wait and see what happens this time. Thank you so much for joining us, all three of you, Avdans Kumar and as well as Amritpal Singh and Ramesh, talking about the US elections that are taking place today. Perhaps the most important, as both the candidates have been saying for a long time in that country. Now, we're moving on to some other news around the world. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Tuesday has dismissed Defense Minister Yoav Gallant over a breakdown in trust during the Gaza war against the Hamas.
The crisis of trust that was getting wider between myself and the Minister of Defense became public, and this crisis does not allow the proper continuation of the management of the campaign. In light of this, I decided today to terminate the term of office of the Minister of Defense. In his stead, I decided to appoint Minister Israel Katz to the job.
In response, Gallant said that working to ensure the country's security would remain the mission of his life after Benjamin Netanyahu dismissed him. And Israel Katz has been appointed as Israel's new defense minister. After his appointment, Katz has vowed to prioritize the return of Israel hostages from Gaza and the destruction of Hamas and the Hezbollah. And Gideon Saar has in turn been appointed to replace Katz as foreign minister. Now, more than 100,000 cars have been damaged after last week's deadly floods in Spain, with over 60 people dead. Paiporta is one of the worst affected areas by this disaster, which in total has killed at least 217 people and left dozens missing in the country. Damaged homes and dozens of cars have been left piled up on the streets in Paiporta. Public anger has mounted over what locals decry as a slow and insufficient response by authorities, which led to King Felipe and Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez being pelted with mud during their visit on Sunday. And that's all we have at the moment in this edition of our broadcast, the special broadcast we're bringing to you tonight as far as the US elections is concerned. But do stay tuned to DD India for all the latest. Well, that's of course something that you can do right away as well. Download the DD India mobile app, scanning that QR code on the screen. And for all the latest, keep watching DD India.